Hi, I'm Floy Quintos and I'm guest curator of the exhibit Eloquent Simplicity in Wood and Fiber running at the Yuchengco Museum at the RCBC Plaza until September 25, 2012. When we were putting together the show, we were driven by one idea. How have wood and fiber been used by the people of the Cordillera in their traditional design and aesthetics? How have these materials, which are so common in the Philippines, been used to enhance life, to enhance facets of life, from the family, from agriculture, to the home, and so many other things. Two parts. The first part, and this may be very interesting for students of design, for students of industrial design, shows how contemporary artists have taken wood and fiber to create pieces that actually enhance life. And among these artists, the National Artist Napoleon Abueva, who did this wonderful, this sculpture which just invites you to touch it, not that you're supposed to. There are also nice functional pieces by Claude Tayag. And for fiber, take a look at this slingback, this Solihia wingback chair by Daniel Latorre Cruz, and there are also pieces by Wataru Sakuma. And that's the first part of the show. It's a very small show, but it kind of gives you an idea of, number one, how rich the design tradition is, and how limitless the possibilities of doing things with wood and fiber. Ngayon, tumungo naman tayo. Let's see how the Cordillera people did it, how the people of the Cordillera did it. Actually, it's been a long fascination of mine ever since I was a kid, and I don't know why. I still can't explain it. But the art and the culture of the Cordilleras has always been a fascination of mine. It's also been a fascination of, and this fascination has led me to collect, but it's also led me to make friends with people who have the same passion. You know how it is. When you have a passion, you seek out people who have the same passion. And this show, the main show, brings together pieces from Armand's collection, Armand is a dear friend from Baguio City. It brings together some pieces from the collection of National Artist Ben Cabrera. It also brings together pieces from the collections of other friends, Pinky Gomez Garcia, Bill Galvin, Greg Sapado of Baguio City. In short, it was like, coming together with friends and putting together nice pieces that we felt showed the culture and the design sensibility of the people of the Cordillera. We divided the exhibit into around 5 parts. No? The first is food, very basic. Kasi subsistence farming, agriculture, the need to live, the need to produce crops, the need to store food properly is a very vital part of any human culture, especially in the 2 examples of Bontok or Kankanay meat containers. They didn't have refrigeration then. Sabihin nyo ng malamig doon, but they didn't have refrigeration then. And salted meat could have been stored in containers like this to keep over some time. So you can see that even with the simplest things that are used to keep meat, and this one is essentially a miniature version that's used to keep salt. But you can see that even in the most functional things, there's an element of design. There's an element of wanting to make things beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, and wanting to make things meaning. Central to Cordillera culture, central to Philippine culture is rice. The production of it, the storing of it, the preparation of it. And several of the objects that we picked for the show reflect how important the process of rice preparation is, the process of preparing it for the table, for storage in the granaries. One of the objects that I really like is this. It's called a pumbayuhan. In short, sa atin, lusok ang tawag dito. No? It's a mortar. That's really all it is. But unlike most mortars, which are very plain, hourglass shape, this mortar has 4 dancing figures around it. That's the traditional dance position of the ifugao, which are the people who made this piece. It's ifugao. And you can see it's very old. You can see that it's really quite worn and has lots of use. But you can also see, still vaguely, the 4 figures who are dancing around the bowl, the main bowl. It shows, I think, for me, that utilitarian objects like a pumbayuhan or like a lusok could also have ritual significance, could also be decorated in ways that express just how important the act of pounding and preparing rice was. And it's almost festive. You know, they're dancing around as the rice is being prepared. So objects like this show us that utilitarian objects can be imbued with a certain meaning, a certain joy in this case. For me, joy and importance in the preparation of the rice. Now, how else does rice figure in creating beautiful objects for everyday? This part, these two figures, these are containers. These are not, you'd think they're bulol, they're really not bulol. They're what you call wine containers. They're wine, and they would be brought out for special occasions by the mumbaki and by and those performing the ceremony, and they would be filled with rice wine, which we otherwise know as tapoy. It's stored, usually tapoy is stored in beautiful earthenware porcelain jars, which were traded from China. But when they were brought out for ceremonies, when tapoy was important and when the priests had to drink, they would use objects like this. These are two rice wine containers from the Hapao people. And it shows a certain scale, a big one here and a small one, a much older small one here. And if you kind of want to look closer, you'll see that there's very fine patina from the mold. I don't know if it's called mold, but it's a reaction already to having the rice wine put in. And it's unusual that they would carve a bulog figure to serve the rice wine. It's a visual. He would sit among living priests, living mumbaki, all who would be dipping their bowls into this rice wine. I like to think that their plates and their bowls and their ordinary everyday functional objects had a certain aesthetic appeal. Let's take a look at these bowls. This is a characteristic shape for the Cordilleras, for the Ifugao especially. We call it the star bowl because it's notched, right? You see the notches. You see the notches on this. But it's strange, it's really fascinating because even these notches were not just decorative. They were a way so that you could easily hold the bowl. And so that it wouldn't slip. It was in short, alam na mong Ifugao kung paano gumawa ng ergonomic design. Because they could hold it any which way. And they were the Ifugao, the Cordilleras, were the only culture in the Philippines which traditionally used spoons. Forks, no. Spoons, yes. And the many spoons that are found all over the exhibit show just how creative you could be with a spoon and how ergonomic you could be with a spoon. These spoons here, as well as some other spoons in the exhibit, all have human figures, bulog figures, anthropomorphic figures on them. And besides being, wow, pretty, they're also very easy to hold. Here are some nice examples of star bowls. And you'll see just what I mean by the ergonomic handling of it. It's very easy to hold. Among the bontok naman and the kalkanay, we would have the kinahu, which are anthropomorphic bowls. But again, the handles, just to facilitate easy handling, they're carved in the form of animals. So you have something that's anthropomorphic, you have something that's So you have something that's zoomorphic, you have something that's nice to look at with the notch trims. At the same time, it's easy to hold. You see two examples of bowls, and the gansa. And the gansas are flat. They don't have the knobs that you see in the Mindanao, and they're played either by hand or with a stick. What makes it interesting is that these two bowls, they were not just things that you could play. They were heirlooms. They were passed on, and making them more important was the fact that they would carve handles so that the string would pass through the handle and hold the bow. It would be held like that. In actuality, they would hold it like that, and they would play it either by hand or with a beater. And most of the handles have double figures, double anthropomorphic figures. You have two bulog figures here facing each other, here facing apart. There's a kind of erotic thing going on with the galingagong handle. But what's really interesting, And what shows how important these gongs were to the traditional culture is the gong there, which is held in place by a human jawbone. Now, where did this jawbone come from? It came from the head of a slave enemy, of an enemy slave from another village. And headhunting was really an important part, a very integral part of Cordillera culture until I would say until the mid-20th century, or earlier on when the Americans stopped it. But a piece like this shows us how the spirits of the vanquished could enhance a prestigious object like a gong. And they believed that by being attached to the jawbone, the gong would give more resonant music, and the spirit of the gong would be more pleased to perform, to be shared with people, because such an important object like such an important trophy like a jawbone had been attached to it. And you can see just how soft the gong is already, how old it is. You can see how smooth and how soft the gongs are. Let's move on to the field. We finished home, we finished the hearth and the home. Let's move on to the field, which is an equally important part of the environment for the Cordilleras, because that's where most of the things, that's where most of daily life happened. One thing about Cordillera homes is that they were really just homes. They had cooking areas, they were small, they were, people slept there at night, people ate there, but most of the other activity, planting, preparation of rice, interacting with your neighbors, most of that activity took place outside the home. Kaya nga, if you look at the houses of the Ifugao, they're really rather small, and they're put above the ground, and the whole of the lower part, the whole of the village, that was part of the concept of home. And we're moving on to field. This is an example, a very rare example of an object called a komis, or a bihang. It's not made of wood, it's made of fern, and there's some clay repair going on right there. And if you're familiar with ferns in the Cordillera, you'll notice that they grow like a human head. It's like a head coming into being. And when the fern is that big, they were turned into bihang. Bihang were guardians of the roadside, they were guardians of the entrance to the villages. And because they were made of fern, they kind of got destroyed very easily. This is a very early example, one of the few that we have. In fact, it's the nicest one I've got. This naman, this is what you call it. This is similar to the komis. It's a padao. I think it's been cut from the original post. This would have been much higher, part of a longer post. And it's very abstract. It depicts a sitting Bulut figure. He would have had a wine cup around here. And these two objects were spirit guardians of the fields, of the paths leading to the villages, of the environment.